If I do my job correctly, in the next couple of minutes, each and every one of you will gain the insight to the secret of lifelong happiness. And perhaps, if you listen well enough, you will be able to share it with your loved one. Because talking about happiness actually rouses up people's attention. People want to feel happy, but not everyone knows the true definition of it. So let's start with what we already know about happiness. Now, there have been dozens and dozens of studies done by social scientists, psychologists, and economists when it comes to the field of happiness. And they all begin with one single question. Who's happy? Now, in the United States, back in the 1970s, a very good stable proportion of the population considered themselves to be very happy. In an accurate test survey that was done, it was found out that on average, an American is happy about a third of the population. And about 50% of Americans consider themselves to be relatively happy. And about 15 to 10% consider themselves to be quietly depressed. Now, in 2021, the Statistics Department of Malaysia produced a statistic that shows that an average level of happiness among Malaysians, among us, is somewhere around 6.48 out of 10. Not bad for a first world country. But you see, that's not the most interesting question when it comes to happiness. Personally, for me, it's not, right? The most interesting question when it comes to the field of happiness is what makes a person happy? Dr. Arthur Sabers, a Harvard professor and also a social scientist, coined a term in what he called as the happiness equation. And it basically goes like this. Almost 48% of your happiness comes from genetics, and almost 40% of your happiness comes from external environment, and the remaining 12% comes from your habits. Now, let's start with genetics. You see, a couple of years ago, researchers at University of Minnesota conducted a wonderful database on this topic. And what they did was they set up a set of questionnaires to be given out to 1,300 pairs of adult twins, fraternal and identical twins. And what I found out is that the total variation of happiness of these people have some sort of genetic variation of it, almost 50%. Now, the other 50% is the external environment, like what car they drove, what kind of country they live in, what kind of salary they have. Those are the other 50%. But no one denies that almost 50% of your happiness has some sort of genetic basis. Now, what does this actually mean to us, right? You have someone in your life who's constantly happy, who's constantly smiling, who's constantly cheerful. You look at their Instagram feed and they're constantly having a great time, and then you feel bitter and resentful and hating yourself because you're not having a great time. And you might be wondering, what's the secret? Well, it could just be the fact that they inherit a good set of genes from their parents, and maybe you inherit a grumpy set of genes. Because you see, your genes are what we call as epigenetics. Epigenetics means epi means on top, genetics means genetic on top of genetics. Epigenetic means that your genes are literally what we call as switches. Your genes will literally turn on and off based on your external environment. And so it's very important for you to understand that you are the master of your switches and not the slave to your own proclivity. It's the old oracle of Delphi, to know thyself. Now, the next one is external environment. I think this is a bit of a big swinger because I think most of us in this room expect where your happiness might lie, right? It's the old cliche idea of self-help. Go for your dreams, avoid sickness, avoid unhappiness, and you will be happy. You know, if I get 4.0 GPA, I'll be happy. If I marry the woman I love, I'll be happy. If I land my dream house, I'll be happy. Is it though? In other words, if I have X, I'll be happy. Now, there's this wonderful research that was done to compare the level of happiness between those who just had a car accident and those who just won the lottery. And obviously, on paper, those who won the lottery will be much happier than those who just had a car accident, right? But what they found out is that 6 months after they did the test, they redo it again. And what I found out is that the level of happiness of those who just had car accidents 6 months prior and those who just won the lottery are pretty much the same. There's no difference to it. Now you might be wondering why is that, right? You see, if I were to ask you right now, what makes you happy? You might say, well, it's reading a book, painting a portrait, watching the sunset, a drink with a friend. The little things in life that makes you happy, right? But when you win the lottery, the sphere of happiness actually explodes. And that's damaging in terms of the long run. Or you might look at it this way, right? If I were to ask you right now, if I were to double down your salary right now, how long do you actually think you'll be happy? If right now you actually got the news that you got 4.8 GPA, how long do you actually think you'll be happy? Because the answer to those questions is, most of the time, it's not the law. Now, the key answer is that it's not that you don't get happiness from external environment. You do, but it doesn't last long. Over time, it supersedes. All right? And so that actually brings us to the last part, the habit, which means that while we may not be in control of our genetics and external environment, we can sure well work on our habits. And there are 4 main habits that all the happy people in the world can work towards. This is the thing that you should be really focusing on. Genetics, not in our control. External environment may or may not be in our control, but habits sure do. The first habit that all of you should really be focusing on is faith. And by faith, I don't mean traditional faith. I don't mean religious faith, although you can do that. By faith, I mean anything that gives you a sense of something grandeur, something transcendent, something bigger than yourself. It could be a walk in the park, it could be watching the sunset, reading about the ancient story, or it could just be about meditation. Whatever it is, you choose. Because the Dalai Lama often reminded us that, remember, you're 1 of 7 billion. And by that, it doesn't mean that you're insignificant, that you don't mean anything. By that, he meant, don't forget to take life into perspective. To zoom out from our narrow, advanced perspective of our life. Because most of our days are being spent on me, right? My life, my health, my car, my status, my look, my friend, my girlfriend. It's so self-centered. And so when you spend serious amount of time and effort focusing on a transcendental thing, focusing on something bigger than yourself, you're actually moving towards the path of happiness. And so we needed this spiritual walk, or else life will be too intense. The second part is family. Ties that you don't break, the ties that you don't choose, and God knows in many cases that you wouldn't. And we all know you have that one uncle or one auntie during the event is always going to be the party pooper, so it's going to ask you when you're going to get married, when you're going to change your car. You all know those people, right? But deep down, you also know that those people are the people that you can count on during the 2 a.m. emergency call. So don't break your family ties over trivial matters, over political indifferences. Learn to coexist among them. The third part is friendship. If there's any philosopher that really hones in on this idea of friendship, I think it's Montaigne. Montaigne wrote in his essay that most of our friendships are nothing more than just mere acquaintances. I'm a friend with you because we both support the same football team. For Montaigne, that's not a true friendship. What Montaigne is calling for a friendship whereby a sense of unity within you and I, a sense of suffering, a sense of joy, a sense of presence, a sense of you and me being together in this hall. That is the sort of friendship that Montaigne is actually calling for. And you see, the topic of happiness, the topic of friendship is so important that Aristotle wrote a whole chapter of it in his famous book, Macronutrients. And so friendship is something that is often overlooked in the 21st century, especially in our rapid fast world. And last but not least is work. Now, this one might be a bit hard for you to understand because most of us hated our job. We don't really like our job, right? We all have those Sunday evening existential dread. Oh, tomorrow I have to go to work again. We don't like that stuff, right? You see, you might be wondering, how does work actually translate to happiness? It doesn't make sense to most of us, right? Well, actually, people who actually enjoy their work, who believe deeply that the work they're doing is contributing to something bigger than themselves, they will actually feel happy, regardless of the job title. Whether you're an electrician, business bus driver, a businessman, you're a lecturer, a janitor, whatever your job title is, if you truly believe that the world is a better place for having you than without you, you will feel happy in your workplace, regardless of your job title. That's very important. As the late Roman philosopher, one of my favorite philosophers actually, Seneca wrote in his famous book that happy is he who makes others better. So you see, those are like the gist idea when it comes to happiness. The 4 main habits: faith, family, friendship, and work that serve others. Those are the things that you should really work on in your life. And so, when I was doing this research about happiness, right, what I realized actually is this thing called happiness is not something that the 21st century people created yesterday. If you read Aristotle, he uses the word eudaimonia, which means human flourishing. If you read the Stoics, they use the word akrasia. And if you read the Quran, they use the word yahdi qalba, which is peace of the heart. And so each and every one of us in this room knows what it feels like to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be satisfied, to feel enjoyment, not hedonistic. Hedonistic and happiness are not the same, and you know the difference. It could be, I don't know, your first morning of Christmas, or it could be the day when you finally met the woman you love. We all know that feeling inside us. And perhaps, for some of us, it's been a while since we're actually happy. If someone were to ask you, when was the last time you felt happy, you couldn't actually figure out when. And perhaps happiness has not been kind to you. And I just want to say something that if you feel unhappy right now in this hall, I just want to say that's alright. That's completely fine. Happiness and unhappiness are both sisters and brothers. You cannot be happy 24/7. It's a one-way road to psychosis if you want to be happy 24/7. You need to have moments of grief, joy, ecstasy, stress, anxiety, fulfillment. You need to have the whole range of human emotions to know what it feels like to be truly alive. And to end this talk, I would like to give you a quote from my favorite book, actually, from Viktor Frankl, which actually summarizes everything that I taught today. Where he said that for success, like happiness cannot be pursued, it must be ensued. And it only does so as an unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. And with that, I wish each and every one of you in this hall personally all the best and good luck in your attainment of happiness, joy, serenity, and tranquility. Thank you very much.